Hi, mine's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the way in which Boris Johnson's behaviour may become increasingly erratic, even dangerous, as trust with the public has clearly become irreparable and he faces mounting pressure that has just increased yet again today from within his own ranks to resign. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we've endured an interesting few days with Boris Johnson's twists and turns over the Chris Pincher scandal and his role in promoting a, at the very least, strongly suspected sex offender into a position whereby MPs with complaints of harassment, including sexual harassment, would have to report them to him. It was an extremely bad look. And we've seen this pattern of denials from Johnson before. He denies any wrongdoing, then facts come to light, so he changes his story to take account of those facts. He doesn't, and I said this about Partygate, didn't I? It's not, he doesn't think about what more facts may come out. No, he just changes his story for what's come out. Then he'll change it again and again, until eventually he has to accept that he was a lying little toad, but he didn't mean to lie because he's actually just too thick and lazy with an appalling memory. So we should leave him alone after his fake apology. But the speed with which Johnson has rattled through the process this time is staggering. On Friday, Johnson denied knowing anything about these allegations against Pincher. On Saturday, he changed his story to not knowing of any specific allegations. On Sunday, he changed it again to not knowing of any specific serious allegations. On Monday, he just seemed to give up. He knew all about it, but he still thought, on balance, that it was right to give Pincher this job. Yeah, he's a bit of a sex pest. And yes, this job would involve listening to complaints from MPs about sex pests. But I thought he'd be quite good in the role, you know. So Pincher by name and Pincher by nature was still a suitable candidate to deal with claims of bullying and harassment for the Conservative Parliamentary Party. Today, the senior civil servant who headed up the Foreign Office when Boris Johnson was Foreign Secretary made it clear that a complaint was investigating regarding Pincher's behaviour years ago, along much the same lines as the current scandal, that the complaint was upheld. There was nothing, we're not really sure one way or the other. No, the complaint was upheld, admitted to, quite frankly. Pincher apologised at the time and promised not to continue this behaviour. In addition, Boris Johnson, as Foreign Secretary at the time, was informed of the result of this investigation. We now see reports that even cabinet ministers are sick of lying for Johnson in interviews. Presumably not just because they look increasingly stupid and implausible as they do so, but because they can't be sure that Johnson is coming clean about what they're denying as they're denying it. You know, with stories changing this quickly, can you really be sure that a line you've been briefed to report is the same as when you open your mouth as it was when you sat down in the interview chair? You go on an interview to defend Boris Johnson. Oh, no, he knew nothing about this. This just in, Boris Johnson's admitted knowing everything about it. Oh. Boris Johnson is, of course, a terrible liar. Sacked as both a front bench politician and a journalist for lying. Two professions which are not exactly considered entirely trustworthy. But just about enough people either considered him honest, or even if they knew he was a liar, he's not a liar that'll hurt me. So Johnson was still an electoral asset for the Tories. But as more and more of the public see him for who he is, will we come to a point where he no longer cares? After all, he told the most desperate lies to absolve himself of blaming the Pincher scandal, and they unravelled as quickly as he told them. It was like he told a lie. It wasn't weeks later, it was immediately. Here's the proof you're lying. Oh yeah, different lie. Here's the proof you're lying again. So unlike in the past, where it took a lot longer to expose his lies, and his advisors didn't even bother to come up with lies this time that would even last a few weeks. They just gave out a series of ill thought out knee-jerk reactions to get past an awkward question that they must have known would be exposed immediately. You know, have we entered a phase now where Johnson doesn't even attempt to tell believable lies? He never actually thinks if the lie's believable. You know, I remember towards the end of Robert Mugabe's rule in Zimbabwe, I read an interview with him And the interviewer at one point asked him about the terrible food shortages. Like, you go into shops, there's like just a few tins on the shelves. And Mugabe, he didn't come up with how he was going to deal with this problem. He just lied about the facts. He denied that the shortages existed. It's like, no, I've been into the shops. There's like just a few tins. No. Why? Who would it fool? People in Zimbabwe who are living that reality could see for themselves. Yeah, he might fool some people outside the country. He might have fooled me. I might have thought, who to believe? The president or the journalist? Okay, but what good did that serve him? It was just the ridiculous lie of a fantasist whose delusions had to be maintained against all practical reason. You know, we may see the same in Boris Johnson. Not just lies that the critically thinking can see through. We've been seeing through those for years. But the ones that everyone can see through. In just over 2 weeks' time, if Johnson's still around, Tory MPs are going to be voting on the members of their 1922 backbench committee. This is seen as a new confidence vote in Johnson. Because if Johnson's allies manage to occupy most of those positions, if he's got any left, he should be safe for a while because they will block any moves to change the rules on confidence votes. Remember that given that a confidence vote took place a few weeks ago, Johnson is technically safe from another challenge until next June. However, if known opponents of Johnson manage to occupy the majority of positions on the committee, it's expected that they will change the rules to allow for another vote much sooner. Could even be as soon as September. In fact, I'm seeing reports today. Some Tory MPs don't even want to wait till September. But it could, you know, if the Privileges Committee is turning up new damaging evidence, and by September I'm sure we'll have heard something. And if it looks like not only are they going to have to find him guilty of deliberately misleading Parliament, but recommend a hefty suspension, which would inevitably see the Prime Minister losing his status as an MP. I mean, how's Johnson going to react if the committee is suddenly full of people who've publicly stated he should go? Nothing much will happen over the summer recess if he survives the next few weeks. But how might his behaviour change as he becomes aware of the sword of Damocles dangling over his head? Will he even prepare for life after government? Because one of the good things for a politician, you know, especially at the top of the tree, once they leave office, if they're so minded, they can claim whatever they like. They can claim that any subsequent improvements that are made by his successor were actually down to groundwork he laid out while in power. Oh yeah, you're enjoying this, aren't you? That was me, that. It's just that it took time. You know, but they can also claim that anything goes wrong was because his successor cocked up the carefully laid plan he prepared. Well, you know, I had this plan in place and then they just wrecked it. And why would they do that? In 2 years' time, you're going to be living in gold palaces. Absolute madness. But there you go. They got rid of me. What can I do? You know, there are so many dodges you can pull if you want to maintain the delusion that you were a great leader and your troops were mad to get rid of you. Is Johnson going to make increasingly outlandish promises so that when he is ousted, he can say to the public, you could have had it all if you stuck by me, but now you've lost it all. There you go. You know, he also has the power to salt the earth if he feels the end is coming. I keep seeing people wondering if the cabinet will finally put Johnson out of his misery. And, you know, these fast-moving events, maybe by the time this video comes out, there'll have been a few resignations. But I just think, if even his staunchest allies are pissed off with events, it is natural to think, well, you know, surely a few cabinet resignations will get the ball rolling. But the politics is tricky, isn't it? You get quite a lot of money for being a cabinet minister. It's nearly an extra £70,000 on top of their salary for being an MP. That's a lot of anyone's money. But, you know, and some members of the cabinet are competent enough to remain under a new leader. Like, I don't think Michael Gove's worried about his pay packet, or Ben Wallace, Nadeem Zahawi, Sajid Javid potentially as well, even maybe Simon Hart. I think they have a good chance of still being cabinet ministers under any leader. But some of the others may sneak in depending on who replaces Johnson. Like Dominic Raab, Priti Patel, Anne-Marie Trevelyan. They're not competent, they're not clever. But I think they may have just enough clout amongst MPs to be worth keeping on. Maybe one or two others like Kwasi Kwarteng or Alex Sharma if he doesn't get the UN job. But they may not be confident of remaining in the cabinet. I think a lot will depend on whether or not they back the right horse in the leadership contest. I think for some of the others, like Michael Gove, it's like they know he's good. It doesn't matter who he backs in the leadership contest. Whoever wins is likely to take him on. Some of the others will give him a cabinet position for a reward if they've helped them win. But if they backed the wrong horse, maybe they'd be out. But then there's plenty of others. Do I have to name Nadine Dorries and Jacob Rees-Mogg? Surely they're on their way out. I know Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't care about the money. It's peanuts to him. But for most of them, it's a lot of money and a lot of influence as well, and a lot of status that they're losing if Johnson goes. But they do seem to be tired of lying to cover Johnson. Maybe except Dominic Raab. He still seems to be fine going out and insisting that all the rules and procedures were correctly followed. But then Dominic Raab is a deputy of very little brain. But it does seem that Johnson's support is draining away now. We've just seen a load more drain away today. Many of his backbenchers turned after the Owen Paterson scandal, many more after the public backlash over Partygate and the subsequent string of by-election losses. And as I say, I still cannot get it through to my head how many Tory MPs really thought they were going to retain Tiverton and Honiton. Like, what are you smoking? But so that is scales falling from their eyes now. But his cabinet remained with him through all this. The benefits of promoting based purely on loyalty rather than ability. But even they seem reluctant now. They're struggling to get them out to defend him. And if Johnson feels that his time is near, you do wonder how he might behave if there seems to be nothing else to lose. If we're lucky, he'll just trigger an emergency general election. But Johnson wants to retain power. He's just announced, I saw on social media a tweet from him. I had to look again. I always have to look again when he tweets something to make sure it's not the parody account. And he's just announced that tomorrow we'll see the biggest single tax cut in 10 years and record investment in infrastructure and skills. Oh, yeah. None of these boasts will be true, of course. But you can see the strategy. He needs to get the polls moving back in his favour. Remember, Tory MPs don't care about his behaviour. His behaviour was just like with Pincher. Someone made the point, someone pointed out in The Guardian, someone was making the point that just as Boris Johnson knew what Chris Pincher was like when he appointed him, so the Tories knew what Boris Johnson was like when they appointed him. They don't care about his behaviour. They care that the public now care. That's what they care about. So Johnson's just going to make increasingly impressive promises of shiny things in the future. Because if he can't get more of the public back on side, he's toast. If he can, he's not. It's really that simple. If the public suddenly loved him again, Tory MP resistance would melt away. He knows it, I suspect. You know, it's always hard to tell with the fantasists what they really do know. But I think he probably recognises the need to regain popularity. So of course he will now make grand promises. And he'll worry about how to explain why they never happened later. You know, there's to be an investigation now into the claims of 40 new hospitals. Because it turns out there's not 40 new hospitals at all. I know, amazing, isn't it? We're not getting 40 new hospitals. But there's to be an investigation into that with a report coming out next year as to what's going on. You know, and with Johnson, every statement is about surviving another week. Even if it means a bigger problem to deal with later. You know, government with Boris Johnson is like a bleep test. You run for your life to get to the post in time, only to give you an even harder task after it. And just as with a bleep test, eventually you won't make it. But yes, I expect the lies to become more unhinged now in his desperation to cling on to power. His sole focus right now is getting the polls moving back in his favour. You know, so that's what he will focus on. Big promises, grand promises. Promise the earth. Deliver nothing, but promise the earth. Jam tomorrow. More jam tomorrow. Maybe even lemon curd tomorrow. Unless, that is, more Tory MPs finally decide that enough is enough. They are on a bit of a timer. Part of you thinks, well, they'll just wait for these 1922 elections. But then part of you thinks, as soon as they're over, they're into summer recess, there's not a lot they can do then. They've got to put up with him for a year, a month and a half. So it would be remarkable if there is a major move against Johnson. You know, because it would need cabinet resignations. I mean, that's when you'll know the time's come. When several members of the cabinet resign. But sometimes the end can happen pretty quickly. The reason rebels made a mess of the last confidence vote is because they didn't coordinate amongst themselves. Now, that wasn't just stupidity. They couldn't coordinate easily because Johnson rules his parliamentary party with threats. Threats that they take seriously. Dissension is not tolerated. But if MPs no longer fear reprisals, well, then there's nothing to stop them talking to each other openly about getting rid of Johnson. Because if they're confident he's not going to be around much longer, like even if he withdraws the whip from them, okay, the next leader will just give it back to me. You know, and if that happens, the end could come very soon indeed. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.